Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a review of The Laughter by Sonora Jha. I just finished this book. It took me like 5 days, I think, so it's a pretty quick read for me. But I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars and I want to talk a little bit about it, as I think I'm going to try to do at least like mini reviews for all the books that I finished this year, just so I can have a digital visual account of it, and also just generally. So this book is a very complicated novel that kind of blends academia, politics, whiteness, what it means to be an immigrant or a minority in America all together in a really interesting, provocative way. This is written by a woman of color who I believe is from the United Kingdom, so that kind of brings an interesting perspective as well. And overall, I really enjoyed it. So let's talk quickly about the plot and then just about like my general thoughts. Okay, so the plot is essentially you are in the perspective of a white English professor in the Pacific Northwest, and he is obsessed with his coworker, who is a Pakistani woman who wears a hijab, and she's a new professor of law. And they meet because they're on a committee together of some sort, and then their relationship kind of goes from there. And essentially, she also has her nephew who lives with them, who came from France because of a situation with his mother where she was in kind of a public discourse around wearing the hijab in public. And so it's just a very kind of interesting storyline, and you're in the perspective, the first person perspective, and then you read emails of the woman professor. And so it's a pretty limited POV perspective, but I really enjoyed that. And I think you kind of descend into madness with this white professor who's middle-aged, divorced, has a very complicated relationship with women, and becomes very obsessed with this woman, and also becomes kind of obsessed and a very close friend of the nephew, who's maybe 13 or 15, I can't remember exactly. But essentially he just finds himself trying to really engage in their lives in ways that they might not really want to. And I'm not going to talk about the ending because I don't really want to give it away, and it's a pretty huge spoiler, and I think going into this blind is better. But it brings up a lot of questions around what it was like in 2016 to be a white man working in academia when there was this really big call for people to be more liberal and to be more thoughtful about what you're teaching. And I'm reading it from a white perspective, so my perspective is obviously different from a person of color who might read this book. But I really enjoyed it, and I thought that it asked a lot of very provocative questions that I think a lot of people would be very uncomfortable to ask themselves. There's kind of a really strong sense of, what does it mean to be performative? What does it mean to be white? What does it mean to be a woman of color in academia? And what does it look like to look at women not only misogynistically, but then also thinking about it as a man who is white in this time where it's really complicated, and your coworker wears a hijab and some people feel comfortable and some people don't. And so it just brings up a lot of really interesting questions. I would say this is almost like a literary thriller, like a literary fiction thriller or suspense. You're kind of egged on through the whole thing to really imagine where the darkest place your mind could go and what this man could do. And then in the end, there is something very shocking. But yeah, overall, I thought it was really good, very provocative. Like I said, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think this is pretty peak literary fiction. I didn't give it 5 stars because I felt like the descent into madness was just so uncomfortable to read, and not in a way that I was literarily shocked, but just in a way that I was very kind of not bored, but just a little tired by the middle of it. But then it picked back up at the end. So I think there's kind of a little bit of a duality. And then the other thing is just there's pieces of this person where you believe in his white rage in a lot of ways, but then if you think about it, there's a scene where his tires get slashed because of some of his political feelings, or some of the ways that people might think he's going to vote on this big vote at the school, and it's he basically doesn't react at all. So I just felt the characterization was not at 100% reality, which I would have preferred, but I think that it was very close. I think the writing was pretty crisp, and it's a pretty new book. I think it came out in 2022, so it's not 2023, so this is a new release. And so, there's not a lot of issues with it. I think it's the best book I've read so far. I mean, I've only read 3 books, so it's not that many, but I would definitely give this a try if you like the show with Sandra Oh, I believe is her name, called The Professor, maybe, or The Department. That one's really good. Or if you like anything really questioning like what it means to be a man or a woman or a person in academia. It's a strong academic feeling and energy, so if you like that kind of thing, I would definitely suggest it. But yeah, I'm glad I read this, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who likes to be challenged and uncomfortable with a book, but also likes a good plot and a strong character. And shout out to the professor for, or not the professor, the writer for writing something very complicated in a time when this might not be the #1 book that people will pick up. And you can tell that she wrote from the heart and from her experience, and that was really, really powerful. So I will see you in my next video.